The room fell silent, except for the sharp, mocking laugh that cut through the air. "She's blind. How is she even allowed here?" Whispers spread like wildfire, eyes turning to Maya, the blind black woman standing quietly in the corner. But Maya wasn't just standing there. Tonight she was about to rewrite their story. Maya had lived most of her life in a world without sight, but that didn't mean she lived without vision. For her, the absence of light was replaced by a heightened sense of everything else. The way the air shifts before a storm, the texture of paint on a canvas, the subtle hum of a crowded room. Each sound, scent, and touch painted a rich and vibrant picture inside her mind, a masterpiece she was constantly creating from memory and feeling. Art wasn't just a pastime for Maya, it was her lifeline, her language, her rebellion against a world that so often dismissed her before she even spoke. Growing up, she had faced skepticism at every turn. Teachers told her what she couldn't do. Friends doubted her talents. Strangers stared, unsure whether to pity or ignore her. But Maya's heart beat with a fierce determination, one that refused to be silenced. She had learned early on that the world wasn't built for someone like her, a black woman, blind, trying to carve out space in the elite, often exclusive world of fine art. Galleries were often places where people judged with their eyes, and prejudice lingered behind polite smiles and soft words. But Maya had never been one to back down. Every brushstroke she made was a quiet defiance, a message that talent and soul could not be limited by disability or color. Tonight was important. This gallery event was more than just an exhibition. It was a chance to be seen, not just for her blindness or her race, but for the artist she truly was. Maya had poured months of her soul into the pieces she was about to present. Each one told a story of pain, resilience, and hope. And yet, beneath the excitement was a knot of anxiety. She knew how easily the crowd could dismiss her before they even heard her name. She stood by the entrance, feeling the hum of voices around her, the polished floors beneath her feet, the faint scent of turpentine and fresh canvas that always made her heart race. This was her moment, but it was also a moment where everything she had worked for could be shattered by a careless word, a cruel laugh, a glance filled with doubt. For Maya, this wasn't just about art. It was about proving that she belonged in spaces that rarely welcomed someone like her. It was about reclaiming dignity in a world that often tried to take it away. It was about standing tall against a history of being underestimated, overlooked, and dismissed. If she failed tonight, it wouldn't just hurt her pride. It would send a message to every young artist who saw themselves in her. A message that maybe the world wasn't ready to accept them either. But Maya wasn't ready to give up. Not now, not ever. Because sometimes the greatest masterpieces are born from the deepest struggles. And Maya was about to create one the world would never forget. Just as Maya felt a flicker of hope, the atmosphere shifted. A man near the front of the gallery, well-dressed, dripping with arrogance, leaned toward his companion and sneered loud enough for others to hear. "She's blind? How is she even allowed in here?" His words cut through the murmurs like a knife. The crowd's polite facade crumbled instantly. Whispers turned into snickers. Eyes darted to Maya, some filled with disbelief, others with cruel amusement. A woman nearby smirked and muttered, "What can she possibly see in those paintings? She probably can't even tell what colors she's using." Laughter bubbled up around the room, loud and unapologetic. Maya could feel it like a physical blow, the sting of mockery sharper than any insult she'd ever imagined. But beneath the shock, beneath the hurt, something inside her sparked, a fierce, unyielding flame. She wasn't here to be a joke. She wasn't here to be pitied or ignored. She was here to show them all exactly what she was capable of. Maya stood frozen for a moment, the weight of those cruel words pressing down on her chest like a heavy stone. It wasn't the first time she'd been underestimated or dismissed because of her blindness, and likely her skin color. But somehow, tonight felt different. Sharper, more public, more humiliating. She could almost hear the echo of every doubt she'd ever faced, bouncing back at her from the polished gallery walls. "Blind, can't see, not enough." The words weren't just spoken aloud. They were tattooed into her memory by every sideways glance and whispered insult. But Maya was more than those words, more than the labels slapped on her by strangers who had never walked a day in her shoes. She was a woman who had spent years learning to see in a way few ever could, through touch, through feeling, through emotion. Her hands could trace the curves of a sculpture and understand its story. Her fingers could glide over a canvas and catch the subtle rise and fall of each brushstroke. Her heart could interpret color in ways her eyes never would. Still, the sting of rejection cut deep. It wasn't just about tonight's event. It was about a lifetime of being told she didn't belong. A lifetime of fighting for space in a world that constantly tried to write her off. As the laughter died down and the crowd moved on to other conversations, Maya took a deep breath. Her body trembled, not from weakness, but from the storm of emotions swirling inside her. Hurt, anger, but above all, resolve. She thought about the first time she'd picked up a paintbrush, how uncertain she'd been, how many people told her it was impossible for someone who couldn't see to create art that mattered. How many times she had stayed up late, feeling frustrated and defeated, questioning whether it was worth it. But something inside her refused to give up. Because art was more than just a passion, it was a lifeline. A way to prove to herself and to the world that her blindness was not a limitation, but a different kind of vision. She remembered the moments of pure joy when she lost herself in the swirl of colors and textures, when the world faded away and only the rhythm of her hands mattered. The moments when she felt truly free. Maya's mind flicked back to the faces of those who doubted her tonight, the sneers, the mocking whispers. They didn't see her, but she saw them. She saw their fear of what they didn't understand, their need to tear down anything that challenged their narrow views. And that was when the fire inside her blazed brighter than ever. She wasn't going to let their ignorance define her story. Not now, not ever. She would take this moment, the humiliation, the pain, and turn it into power. Because sometimes the deepest wounds become the strongest fuel for change. Maya clenched her fists, feeling the smoothness of her paintbrushes, the familiar weight grounding her. She was ready, ready to create something that would silence the doubters, shatter the stereotypes, and speak louder than any insult. Tonight was not the end of her journey. It was only the beginning. And in that moment, Maya wasn't just an artist. She was a force to be reckoned with. After the harsh words faded and the gallery buzz moved on, Maya felt an intense calm settle over her. The sting of ridicule was still fresh, but beneath it simmered a fierce resolve. She knew what she had to do. This wasn't just about one night or one gallery. It was about rewriting the story everyone thought they knew. She would create a masterpiece, one born from every insult, every doubter, every moment she was told she couldn't. That night, Maya sat alone in her small studio apartment. The dim light barely illuminated the worn wooden table cluttered with brushes, paints, and canvases, waiting to be transformed. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply, reaching out with her hands to touch the blank canvas before her. The texture was rough but welcoming, like a silent promise. Creating art without sight was never easy. It was a dance of senses, the way the bristles felt against her fingers, the subtle differences in paint thickness, the smell of oils and acrylics mingling in the air. But for Maya, it was also a deeply emotional experience. Each stroke was a conversation between her heart and the world she could no longer see. She remembered the voices from the gallery, the sneers and snickers that echoed in her mind. Doubt began to creep in, as it always did in moments like these. Can you really do this? Can you make something that speaks so loudly it silences everyone? But then, with steady breath and clenched fists, she pushed the doubt aside. She wasn't just painting for them, she was painting for herself, for every time she had felt unseen, unheard, and underestimated. Days blurred into nights as Maya poured every ounce of herself into the work. Her hands moved with intention, guided by memory and intuition. She explored textures that spoke to her soul, thick ridges of paint, swirling patterns that mimicked the chaos she felt inside, quiet valleys of soft pastels that whispered hope. Yet with every setback, Maya found a deeper well of determination. She reminded herself that her blindness wasn't a barrier. It was her unique lens on the world. Her art wasn't about perfection. It was about truth, about feeling, about turning pain into power. Friends who visited her studio offered encouragement, but also doubt. How will the world accept this? They asked. How will they see it if you can't? Maya smiled softly, knowing their words came from fear, not understanding. She didn't need their permission or approval. She had her own vision, and that was enough. As the masterpiece grew, so did Maya's confidence. Each layer told a story, not just of hardship, but of resilience and hope. She was crafting more than a painting. She was crafting a legacy, and with every brushstroke, she was getting closer to the moment when the world would finally have to stop and listen. The day of the unveiling arrived like a slow drumbeat, steady, intense, impossible to ignore. Maya stood behind the heavy curtain, her heart thundering in her chest, every nerve alive with a mixture of excitement and fear. The gallery was packed. The murmurs of the crowd flowed like a river, thick with skepticism and curiosity. Would they see beyond her blindness? Would they finally understand the vision she had carried for so long? The air felt electric. Whispers floated around, some full of doubt, others tinged with anticipation. Can she really pull this off? Is this just another blind woman's attempt to be seen? Maya's fingers brushed against the fabric, steadying herself. She thought back to the months spent alone. Every moment of doubt, every tear shed in the silence, every burst of inspiration that carried her through. Behind that curtain wasn't just a painting. It was her soul laid bare. A story told in colors and textures no one else could feel the way she did. The gallery lights dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd, thick and expectant. A single spotlight focused on the covered canvas. Then, with a steady breath, the curtain was pulled back. Gasps rippled through the room. The masterpiece stood tall, an explosion of emotion and texture, alive in a way that defied logic. Those rough, tactile layers seemed to pulse with energy. The colors told stories of pain, hope, fury, and triumph, each stroke demanding to be felt, understood. The critics, the skeptics, the mocking voices from before, they all fell silent. Some faces twisted in confusion, others softened in awe. Eyes darted from one detail to the next, searching for the secret behind the power that emanated from the canvas. Maya watched quietly, sensing the shift in the room. The art wasn't just seen, it was experienced. The moment hung, heavy and electric. Would this be the turning point? Would this be the masterpiece that rewrote Maya's story and challenged everyone who ever doubted her? The crowd held its breath. The moment the curtain dropped, the room transformed. What had once been a sea of doubt and sneers shifted into a wave of awe and silent admiration. The masterpiece Maya had poured her soul into stood there, not just a painting, but a story writ large in bold strokes and textured layers. Critics leaned in, fingers twitching as if they could reach out and touch the emotions woven into every inch of the canvas. Faces that had worn skepticism now softened, brows furrowing as they tried to grasp the depth of what lay before them. One of the harshest critics, a man who had dismissed Maya moments before, was the first to speak. His voice was low, almost reverent. I didn't expect this. It's powerful." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Whispers turned to conversations filled with wonder and respect. People were no longer seeing the blind black woman. They were seeing the artist, the creator, the visionary. Maya stood quietly, feeling the electricity in the air. She couldn't see the expressions, but she could hear the change, the shift from mockery to respect, from dismissal to deep admiration. For the first time, she was truly seen. A woman approached, tears glistening in her eyes. "You've shown us that true vision isn't about sight, it's about heart. Thank you." In that moment, Maya realized this was more than victory, it was transformation. Her art had broken barriers, challenged perceptions, and inspired everyone who witnessed it. The gallery, once a place of judgment, had become a sanctuary of acceptance. Maya's journey from mockery to masterpiece wasn't just her story anymore. It was a beacon for anyone who had ever been underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed. Her blindness wasn't a limitation. It was the lens through which she created a masterpiece that would never be forgotten. Maya's journey was more than a battle against blindness or prejudice. It was a triumph of spirit, courage, and unwavering belief in oneself. What began as whispered doubts and cruel laughter had transformed into standing ovations and heartfelt admiration. She had not only proven her talent to the world, but reclaimed her own story, a story defined not by limitation, but by resilience. Every stroke of her brush was a testament to the power of hope, to the strength that rises when we refuse to be seen as less. In that gallery, Maya found more than recognition. She found validation, not from the critics or the crowd, but from within herself. She had faced the harshest judgments and turned them into a masterpiece that spoke volumes without a single word. Her victory was a beacon for anyone who's ever felt unseen or unheard. It was a reminder that our greatest challenges often hold the seeds of our most extraordinary breakthroughs. If you've ever faced overwhelming odds or been doubted because of who you are, remember Maya's story. Your vision, your unique voice, matters. Sometimes it takes the darkest moments to reveal our brightest light. And if you believe in standing up for what's right, in turning pain into power, share your story in the comments. Hit that like button if Maya's journey inspired you, because together our stories create a masterpiece far greater than any one canvas.